The For the Painter newsletter is in video format this week. A few weeks ago, I did a short biography on artist John Blockley, and since then, I was able to get 2 books from the library, and I thought I would give you a peek inside. This first one is called Getting Started in Watercolor, and as the name suggests, it's somewhat of an introduction to watercolor painting. Part 1 is on basic processes, then we have a fun part on beginnings and doodles, and then color and tone. This is a pretty in-depth section, which is really nice. And then the final section is picture making, where it's more of a portfolio. Now, John Blockley passed away in 2002, and as far as I can tell, he didn't make any videos. Thank goodness we have videos now, because imagine trying to learn how to paint a wash from a picture and some text, especially a graded wash. I mean, it's a beautiful graded wash, but man, it's just nice to be able to see how do you mix the paint, how much water is the artist using, and all those kinds of things. This is a good book, but it is limited to the text and the pictures as far as an introduction to watercolor painting. I thought this was a fun section though. He's talking about how to have fun and play around with the paint without any expectation of anything coming out. Just play around. And he says that he does this or did this a lot in between painting, like waiting for paint to dry. He would just take out a scrap piece of paper and play around. He was always experimenting with how to create texture, how to, apply the paint differently. He used all kinds of tools and devices, and even, he used ink, and he put paint on and washed paint off, always playing around. Also has a section on color mixing. Look at that messy palette. Him and I would have gotten along really well, because we could have compared how messy our palettes would get before we would feel like we need to clean them up. And then in the last section, he has kind of a portfolio of his work, but he does, the book does show close-ups. So here's the full painting, and then this is a close-up of that. And this is another close-up of that painting, and a third close-up of that painting. So this is a good book. I wouldn't say that you should just go right out and try to buy it, because you could probably look at it for free either from your library, or I know you can look at it for free online at archive.org. It's a good book. I don't know that I would consider it a great book, because I think this one is so much better in terms of understanding how he was approaching his technique and what he was thinking about. This book is just jam-packed full of landscape paintings. It's 143 pages. I've been reading it, of course, like any art book, you got to look at the pictures first. So I've studied all of the pictures, but now I'm going back and reading it, and I'm only halfway through. I'm on page 60. This book was published in 1982, and we have the contents here. This first section is all about step-by-step paintings, and that's why I recommend it more than this book, because I think you can learn a lot from that. It's not quite like watching a video, but in some ways it's nice, because you can really study the image and then read the text and understand what's happening because of the text. Anyway, this is all about the step-by-step paintings, and then he gives examples of different types of landscapes, different types of farms that he has painted. So if we go to this beginning section here, this is really good to read. He talks about how, I think this is the section where he paints mostly in the studio from drawings. So he used to do more plein air painting and take out his full set of watercolors and everything. But then he started sketching more on location and then painting in the studio from the drawings. And he's talking about how he's looking for almost an abstract quality as far as developing the texture and what he's using, getting away from the traditional process, and he's using sticks and he's using ink and he's applying paint with different things and he's taking paint off, and he was always experimenting, and that really comes through in this book. So this first section, like I said, is the step-by-step, which is great because he starts off by talking about what he painted and then why he painted and what he was thinking about when he made the choices. And then stage 1, stage 2, and the final painting. Then we go on to the next one, a description of what it is and why, what he's thinking about. And then we have stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So you can see how helpful that would be if you really took the time to read and study. You can see what his process is, and he talks about the techniques. So then we go on to the next section, which is the farm in different locations. And I love that he shares so much of the sketches with us because his sketches are just incredible, I think. The way that he's simplified, and yet he's representing so much land and form, and also notice how much of it is left the white of the paper. And that's how he makes his decision where to put texture and where to keep it very, very simple in a painting. So like this painting, for instance, when you look at his work, you see texture, but then when you look a little more closely, like if I block off this whole area here, you see there's very, very little texture in a large majority of the painting. The water is treated very simply, as is this area down here, and then we have texture in there. Now his paintings may seem a little bit dreary to you, and they probably are a little bit on the dreary side, but you have to consider where he was painting and also just his preference. And also keep in mind that because this was published back before digital photography, there's a chance that his real paintings in person would show more color than the paintings in the book. Thank goodness for digital photographs. I can't imagine having to take a photograph with film and then get the film processed and then look at it compared to the painting. You just don't know what you're going to get. Here's another painting that I love. His compositions are very strong. You could just go through and study how he composes his landscapes, but also look at the areas that are treated nice and simple, the sky, the background mountain, this whole area, nice and simple. Down here, it's just like a graded wash. And then he's got this nice area of texture in there. So yeah, I love this book. I'm working my way through it. Oh, this is fun. I'll show you this. It's he calls it an angry sketch. And he said that he had spent all day unsettled and working in a tentative way. And then he made this sketch. He said, I slashed the drawing onto the paper with sideways strokes of graphite stick reinforced with strokes from felt tip pens of varying point thicknesses. The drawing is crude. I did it about 20 minutes. Very often an angry sketch will quickly capture the important characteristics of a place. It doesn't look angry to me, but I guess he was a little bit irritated at himself. But look at that. Again, look at how much he has simplified. He's created texture where he wants to, but look at how much of it is the white of the paper. And then when he goes to paint that, he can translate that. He has translated that into more simple passages and more textured passages. So like I said, this book, it's full of stuff, 144 pages of it. You might be able to get it from the library, and I know you can view it for free online at archive.org.